Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you are having a good afternoon. Browns headed into the bye week. No game this weekend. Andrew Berry did meet with the media today. At 2-7, not much has gone right for the Browns. Andrew Berry was asked, was this year's roster not as good as they thought it was? And are the Browns looking at a long rebuild?
I think that's probably more of a reflection for after the season. I mean, look, at 2-7, we haven't played well. And, in the NFL with the margins being so thin, it's not always just about, talent. It's also about, team building and, how we marry everything on Sundays. But again, those are all things that we're looking into during the bye week, and obviously we'll do more analysis after the season. One of the beauties of the NFL is it's not like baseball. It's not like basketball where at times you may need these like half-decade long, pivots or rebuilds. I think you see it every year, with teams. Just the margins are so thin. And then honestly, with just the way that our sports works with player procurement, I don't think it's not like we're drafting a 16-year-old kid who's, got to play 8 years in the minors before he comes and produces or something along those lines. So, I think generally you don't necessarily have to see those pivots in our sport.
Now let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. So Tim, basically, he's saying they didn't play well, the roster isn't as bad as it looks, and the rebuild shouldn't be as long.
Yeah, I think I'm most inclined to agree with him about the last part, that it shouldn't be a long rebuild. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway for me this season has been they just gotten subpar play from the quarterback position. Deshaun Watson did not look good for the most part this entire season, and then ruptured the Achilles, and then we saw the good and the bad with Jameis Winston the last two games. And bottom line, the offense hasn't been good enough for a multitude of reasons. Transitioning to a new scheme, trying to figure those things out. Offensive line it gets this season, of course. Not having great play from the quarterback position. You add all that up, and I don't care how good your defense is in today's NFL. If your offense can't score, your defense is going to give up points, and that's kind of what we've seen happen this year. So I don't personally believe it's a long rebuild. Obviously, if this continues the way they are right now, they're tied for the worst record in the NFL. They're 2-7, so I think they do what the Washington Commanders do and get the right quarterback. I know much easier said than done given Cleveland's history with quarterbacks in the draft. I think you find that guy at the position, you fix the offense a little bit, you could turn this thing right back around. And I think the other thing is I feel like this is the danger of just deciding to run it back without making some changes. There's always the risk that you could fall into the trap of everything's going to be the same because we have the same guys, particularly on defense. And to be fair, last year they were the best defense in the NFL in terms of yards. And then you come into this season, you bring all those guys back, and it just hasn't been the same. So I think there's something to not always deciding that you want to run it back. You always want to keep things fresh. And I think that's kind of an underrated part of it. But for me, fix the quarterback. You should be good to go in 2025.
All right, so this from PFF, NFL's midseason report, every team's best player, biggest surprise. Highest graded player, Myles Garrett, 91.3 PFF grade. Second in pass rushing grade, 92.7, and his 41 pressures also among top 10 in all defenders. Biggest surprise, Isaiah McGuire. Might be one of the reasons they were willing to trade Darius Smith. Team's pass rush has generated pressure at a high level the last few weeks. Much of that is because of the emergence of McGuire. Total 12 pressures, only 83 pass rushing snaps. McGuire has also been force against the run, posting an 89.9 run defensive grade with 5 stops. You've noticed him. I guess that's the best way to say it is you've noticed Isaiah McGuire when he's been in there.
Yeah, I mean, I even tweeted about it this morning that he's basically your analytics darling. I mean, you look at PFF, they love Isaiah McGuire, and you look at those numbers you mentioned, the fact that he's able to get such great pressure, 12 pressures on 83 snaps. Obviously, with Darius Smith off to the Lions, you would have to assume that McGuire steps into a much larger role. And quite honestly, I think he's deserved it. I think he's played pretty well given his limited opportunities. I think as he gets on the field more, he certainly has a chance to show more. And I think for the Browns going forward, if he can perform at a good level and really show promise as a potential starter, I mean, that kind of goes to a 2023 draft class where we've seen Cedric Tillman step up the last couple of weeks. We've seen DeJuan Jones get a lot of starting time. He looked great at right tackle, struggled this season, but now we've seen him go to left tackle the last couple of games. and now you want to throw in Isaiah McGuire, who like you said, and certainly is going to get an opportunity. Those three guys perform, and all of a sudden you got a couple of interesting players, and I think that's why looking ahead to the 2025 draft, now you have more picks in play. Now you have a chance to add more young pieces to this team.
All right, as you might imagine, quite a few voicemails. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, I'm calling from Youngstown, big Browns fan. I think we're better sticking with the coach and the management we have right now. We've done so much switching. Stability is better than he was 2-time coach of the year, so you got to stick with him.
Yeah, I poo-poo all of the Barry and Stefanski stuff normally. This, with 2-7, you have to at least listen to it. I still don't think I'd move on from them. What I would do, though, I'd clean house with that offensive staff. That offense has been a disaster. It's just been a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, those moves they've made, they certainly haven't been anywhere close to where they could have been. Deuce Staley coming in, Andy Dickerson coming in, Ken Dorsey's the offensive coordinator. Obviously, it hasn't meshed. I think we can all kind of see that it hasn't meshed. You could just see it out on the field, not just with the stats, but again, the eye test, it just hasn't been there for them. So yeah, that's something I'd clean out. And I agree with you. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry should certainly have the opportunity to get a chance to fix this. Andrew Berry basically saying that it was a collaborative decision to go for Deshaun Watson, and at the time it seemed like a sound decision considering Watson had great success in Houston. Obviously, this was the worst case scenario of all of this, that he has regressed to this level and now has another season-ending injury that'll take 9 to 12 months to heal. And then you have these two massive cap hits. That's about as bad as could have gone, but I think there's enough goodwill there where they've taken this team to the playoffs twice in a 4-year stretch, something this franchise hadn't done since the 80s. So I think it's worth giving them another chance to see if they can turn it around. And personally, I don't think Andrew Berry's drafts have been that bad. Everybody says they're bad drafts. I don't think they have been. The issue is just they had a lack of draft capital. Again, 1 second-round pick in the last 3 years because they traded one of those picks for Elijah Moore, and then traded down in 2022 to get the multitude of thirds. So he hadn't even had a lot of high-level draft capital to play with. So maybe a chance where now he has some to work with. We'll see what he does. Give him another chance. But the pressure certainly going to be on him to get this thing turned around.
Yeah, without question. And yesterday on the show, everybody wants to talk about the job John Dorsey did drafting. He did a nice job in 2018. But he had high picks. He had the first, fourth, and I think Chubb was the 39th. He had Austin Corbin in there. So he had 2 1s, 2 2s. Swing and a miss on Austin Corbett. The other 3 were at Baker Mayfield. I'd have taken either Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson in retrospect. Nick Chubb, a big hit. Denzel Ward, a big hit. Look at his next year. It looks a lot like the Andrew Berry drafts. He didn't have a first. Second-round pick, 1 great. Sione Taki's really he had Greedy Williams in that. There were a lot of misses in that. So your success immediately in the next 2-3 years always is dictated by having high draft picks. There's been a lot of chatter about Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski's job. And those things will happen when a team starts 2-7, falling way below. Remember, they're 2-7. You expected them to be challenging for the AFC Championship. Barry was asked if he thinks he and Stefanski will have the opportunity to turn it around.
Neither of us really think of it that way. Like, I'd say, number one, to myself, I always view myself as a steward of the organization in this role. And really my focus is on doing the things that are in my control, short-term and long-term, to make sure it's in the best interest of the franchise. I would say, to Kevin specifically, there are 13 coaches in the history of the sport to, win a Coach of the Year award multiple times. 10 of them went to a Super Bowl or an NFL championship. 6 of them won one, and 7 are in the Hall of Fame. And he's the second fastest to do it. Kevin's an outstanding coach, and he's absolutely part of the solution with everything.
And again, it's important to note, Kevin Stefanski does not report to Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry does not report to Kevin Stefanski. Both report to the owner, Jimmy Haslam. So he has no skin in the game to say he thinks he's a great coach.
Yeah, I think there's, something said for this partnership that they've had together. And again, the success they've had since 2020, getting the playoffs twice, finally winning a playoff game for the first time in the post-expansion era. There's certainly a lot of reasons to stick with Kevin Stefanski. I think by and large, I think we can all agree he's just had a bad season, and that happens over the course of a long career. Sometimes you just have bad years for one reason or another, and you could point to, the offensive staff not meshing. You could point to issues on the offensive line with health, guys not coming back, at 100% from their season-ending injuries. You could point to the quarterback play not being good enough. You could point to a whole bunch of different things, and sometimes you just have bad years, plain and simple. The thing for the Browns is making sure this doesn't happen again. If you give them a chance, I think, to pull out of this, to get back on track, and or you move on from them, quite honestly. I don't know I don't know what Jimmy Haslam's gonna do. I don't think anybody knows. I do think, we know the perception of the Haslam ownership has been they've been quick to move on from guys. I would imagine because of the success that Barry and Stefanski have had, they'd probably be more likely because of that success to get another shot to turn things around. But I would imagine both guys probably be on the hot seat going into 2025.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I can step aside to quick timeout. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason when we return.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each, 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
How you guys doing? Where do the Browns go from here? Even besides the trade for Darius Smith, everybody from the fans to the media kept blaming Deshaun for the way the team played. Well, Deshaun didn't play this week, and the offense essentially looked like what Deshaun did. So, Deshaun isn't to blame for the lack of run game he had, for the interceptions and the receivers and everything that's been going on. So where do we go from here? Should we pivot towards more of a San Francisco model with a quarterback on a rookie deal, or what is the way forward? Because in my whole lifetime, I've never seen the Browns develop a quarterback or a receiver, and it doesn't seem like we have a light at the end of the tunnel. So where do you guys think we pivoted and go on from here? I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts and comments. Thank you. Have a nice day.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. So, Tim, I think it begins with there's a mismatch. You tried to tweak the offense to build it around shotgun and Deshaun's strengths. I was all for that. People who watch the show know I was all for that. It didn't work. The offensive line has lost its identity in doing that. I would go back to what Stefanski knows. And then relative to the quarterback, we'll get into that in a little bit. You got to figure out what your options are.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't evaluate all those options till the season's over, till you know where you're picking, till you have an idea of, what you want to do with your roster going forward as far as who you want to keep, who you want to move on from, all those different things, and also leaving cap space for your draft pick. So there's a lot to play into that. But, going to kind of what he was saying is the offense struggling again on Sunday. I would agree, yeah, it's not just on Deshaun Watson. I've said all season it's not just Deshaun Watson. There's a lot of things that have gone against his offense. Watson hasn't played well enough. I think we can all agree on that. I don't think when you get paid that money, you're expected to overcome a lot of different things, and he quite simply didn't do that. But I think there's one other big difference with Sunday compared to the rest of the season. Los Angeles Chargers have the best defense in football right now. They're number 1 in scoring. They're number 11 against the pass, number 5 in net passing yards allowed per attempt. They're 8th against the run. That's a really, really good defense. That's easily the best defense the Browns have seen this season, with the exception of maybe the Philadelphia Eagles, who are now suddenly red hot again. So I think that was more of a Chargers defense is really, really good. And then the 2 blown coverage touchdowns you gave up against Justin Herbert put you into a hole where you played right into the hands of the Chargers, who love to play a lot of zone, and the Browns didn't take long enough to adjust, which I think has been another issue, is they've taken a really long time to adjust the game plans, and by the time they have, it's too late. So I just think this is more about who they played more so than they just didn't play well. They just ran into a really good defense on Sunday. I think you have to give the Chargers credit for that.
Yeah, the Chargers defense was good, but the game plan was not good because there was nobody open. I mean, it's almost like the Chargers knew the playbook, which is never a good feeling for your offense. All right, Andrew Berry, again from today, was asked about Deshaun Watson being the Browns quarterback in the future, so moving forward into next year.
Our focus, again, organizationally, is like on making sure that he gets healthy. Just the reality of it is, with any season-ending injury, there is some uncertainty in terms of the recovery, and so our focus is on making sure that he gets healthy, and then we can move from there.
So a decision on his future would be more so based on health as opposed to what you've seen on the field in terms of performance?
No, I'd say this, Daniel. Again, our focus is on getting him healthy, and we'll go from there.
And again, Tim, you got to tell Andrew Berry what he can't say, yeah, we're moving on from him. What are you moving on to? That's the question. Now, Watson wasn't great. Watson was pretty bad. I will give you that. And I'm a guy that thought he would get it together. I'm ready to move on from him. What are you moving on to? And we'll get into that in a minute.
Exactly. I'm with you 100%. I mean, you and I spent the whole spring and summer thinking, this is gonna be the chance. This is when we're gonna see the Houston Deshaun Watson based on how, he played going into it, but hit the shoulder injury that ended last season. But yeah, it obviously hasn't panned out for reasons that are in his control and out of his control, as far as what's going on with the scheme changes, the offensive staff overhaul by and large. But I think the bigger thing is you really can't move on from him, because even looking at his cap number, according to Over the Cap, you try to cut him before June 1st, that's a $172 million dead cap. You cut it down to 118.9. So I think you're in a situation where he kind of has to be on the payroll next season, even if he's, the backup or the third string quarterback or even the starter. Who knows what is going to be, but I think you would have to assume he's going to be on the roster because there's really nothing you can do with him. And then in 2026, when you look at his cut situation, if you cut him post June 1st, that's just his cap hit. You don't have any dead cap hanging around. So that might be the situation where you have to keep him around for 1 year, simply because that fully guaranteed cap hit is going to bite them pretty hard in the checkbook, essentially, as far as cap situation. So that's going to be why I think he's got to stick around for at least one more season. Who knows what happens as far as playing him or whatever. That's up to a whole off season to figure out where you're going to be in the draft and who could be available for you as another option.
All right, so Andrew Berry was asked the question that everybody is asking.
Was the decision to trade for Deshaun Watson yours, or was it your idea, or was this a mandate from above?
Yeah, I'd say this, Mary Kay, like we've always said, all of us were on board. Everyone's on board, and obviously with a big commitment in that regard, like that's always going to be the case.
And Tim, translation, we're not going to tell you whose decision it ultimately was.
Yeah, obviously we're never going to get the full story behind that, and there's no reason to tell the full story. I mean, the bottom line is they made an aggressive move. They thought this could be the guy to fix the quarterback situation after a rough Baker Mayfield season where, he had the shoulder issue. There was the goodbye letter to Cleveland right before the trade for Deshaun Watson happened. It just didn't work. And obviously it's a massive mistake. It's one of the worst trades in the history of sports. I hesitate to say it is the worst because until the Houston Texans win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, I hesitate to say it's the worst trade in NFL history. But right now, obviously, you have 3 seasons to tell you it just simply hasn't worked. He hasn't been available. When he hasn't quite played the level I think everybody expected he has. It's an expensive issue. You gave him a fully guaranteed contract, and he hasn't lived up to it. And now you're essentially looking for an escape route out of it when there really is none. So, I mean, if you're going to do all those things, if you're going to take that kind of risk, give up the picks and the money they did, I think everybody has to be on board. You can't really have anybody saying no to it or being unsure about it. Because when you're, again, with these kind of assets, when you're talking about the most important position on a football field, everybody's got to be on board. So from that sense, I understand what Andrew Berry's talking about. Tim
Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout, other side of the break. Tim has done a way too early mock draft. We'll dive into that. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, hey Dave, hey everyone in chat. This is Guitar Chic, and this time I have a reasonable question. I was just wondering, since there's no great quarterbacks in the upcoming draft, and it's obvious the Browns need one, and you're stuck with Watson, what about Justin Fields? Will he possibly be available, or could we pry him away from the Steelers as an option for the Browns next season? I mean, he's mobile. He has experience, so you wouldn't have to bring a rookie in here, and see what Dorsey and Kev can do with him. So it's just a thought. Thought I'd throw it out there. I mean, we're pretty much just throwing stuff at the wall now. Anyways, have a great night all. Take care. Talk to you later. Woof woof.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, it's not a bad idea. They declined his fifth-year option, so he'll be a free agent. He hasn't started. Former number 2 overall pick. It'd be interesting to see Kevin Stefanski coaching him. I'd be curious. He's got a great arm. He is mobile. Accuracy is an issue, but you know what? He might be one of the guys you bring in if you don't like what you see. Low risk, high reward.
Yeah, I'll disagree with her when I say there's not really any good quarterbacks in this draft. We'll get to it in a little bit. They're not as good as the top end of last year, but they're certainly good enough. As for Justin Fields, yeah, I would be in on that. That would make a lot of sense. We've seen Kevin Stefanski really get a lot from a lot of different quarterbacks. You know, some of the we talk about what Jacoby Brissett did in 2022 to kind of steady the ship, and he played some of the best football of his career. 2023, Joe Flacco needs no explanation what he was able to do there, and obviously last year beating the 49ers with P.J. Walker, beating the Steelers with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He has a record of getting good play from better quarterback play than you would expect from those guys. So you would imagine Justin Fields could be an interesting fit here. The question is obviously if you're able to sign him, what does that mean for Jameis Winston? What does that mean for DTR? And are you necessarily signing him with the idea that he's going to be your long-term starter? Maybe he's your stopgap for whoever you draft, maybe a quarterback that you draft this upcoming April.
All right. So you've done a mock draft. I think you said it's gonna be released tomorrow. Give us a little preview, like a pick or two that you like, and give us the first two.
Well, you're going to get my sneak preview of my first 2025 mock draft. Number one, I went off the order based off tankathon.com based on strength of schedule because there are 7 teams tied for the worst record at 2-7. The first pick in this situation, New England Patriots, they're not taking a quarterback. So they take easily the most talented player in this draft, and that's Travis Hunter, the receiver corner Iron Man from Colorado, probably one of the most unique players we've ever seen in the college game because he can be a number 1 receiver and a number 1 shutdown corner. I don't know if he could be both in the NFL over the course of a long 17-game season. I feel like that's more dependent on the team that takes him. And if you're the Patriots, I would take him as a receiver and give Drake May somebody to work with. Skipping around, we go to the quarterbacks at number 4 with the Carolina Panthers and Shedeur Sanders. I've had Sanders as my QB1 since spring, and there's been really nothing this season that's changed my mind about it. In fact, I think he's really separated himself this season. Hyper accurate, got a lot of poise. The clutch factor is there. Doesn't have maybe the strongest arm. There's a couple concerns as far as off the field that I think needs to be addressed. I think that's something that can kind of just come from maturity. And then number 5, Cleveland Browns. I do have them taking another quarterback, and that's Miami's Cam Ward. Got a lot of starting experience. I wrote about him last week. You'll have a chance to see that when you click on my mock draft, my story about why Cam Ward, I think, could challenge Shedeur Sanders for the first pick. Ward, I think, has more arm talent than Shedeur Sanders. I would put it just kind of below C.J. Stroud and Caleb Williams as far as his pure arm talent is concerned. But for me, when it comes to Cam Ward, what I think hurts him is kind of the way he plays. He's a very kind of high-risk, high-reward quarterback. And, yeah, that could pay off with some spectacular plays. But as we've seen several times this season, games against Virginia Tech, games against Duke, he really is prone to forcing it. And in the NFL, when you force things, more often than not, you're going to get punished for it. And he's able to make some of these plays that you can get away with in college. And again, 5 years starting experience between Incarnate Word and the FCS, Washington State the previous 2 seasons, and now in Miami, where he has the Canes undefeated. He's a Heisman Trophy frontrunner with Ashton Genty from Boise State. I just think what's going to need to happen for Cam Ward is he needs to be better at playing in structure, and he needs to kind of understand that it's okay to take singles. The metaphor of going for the single, not necessarily always looking for the home run ball, and understanding when to give up on a play. And you can kind of understand why he's got that, aggressive mindset, because again, with his pure arm talent in college, you can get away with it. NFL, not so much. So you want to, if you're going to take Cam Ward, I think you don't want to restrain him completely. You don't, because I think that's taking away from what makes Cam Ward very special. You want to tamp it down a little bit. You want to harness it, but you don't want to suppress it, if that makes any sense.
All right. So this is kind of concerning here. Actually, it's really concerning. Browns have played 9 games at the bye. The most scrimmage yards by a Brown this season is Jerry Jeudy with 418, Ford 358, Tillman 259, Njoku 255, Cooper 250, Elijah Moore 249, and Dante Foreman 201. Remember, 9 games, so the top playmaker, if you will, has less than 50 yards a game from scrimmage. Yeah, they got to address. You need wide receivers. You need guys that threaten the defense with the ball in their hands, and you got to find them quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, again, we've talked about, they've certainly tried to get guys in that can improve, your skill position game. But this is something I've been talking about for a while, and I talked with you about this before the show. Looking at Andrew Berry's draft history, yes, I know he hasn't had a lot of high picks, but in his 5 drafts, he's had a total of 6 picks in the top 75. He's used 2 on offensive players, and one of them was the 74th pick in 2023. That was Cedric Tillman. Now, he certainly looks like he's turned a corner. Looks like he could be a solid NFL receiver. But bottom line is the Browns just haven't used a lot of high draft capital in offense in general. I mean, they used the 10th pick on Jedrick Wills. He has not had a good season. I think we can all agree to that. But I mean, we've seen the investments he's made on the defense. Grant Delpit, JOK, second-round picks, they both look very good. Mike Hall Jr. certainly looks like he's got some promise this year, the rookie second-round pick going 54th overall. But there's just not been a lot of investment in high picks on the offense. And I've said this for a while. They got to invest in that. You have to get young, inexperienced pieces. You have to get young, inexpensive pieces on this roster on the offense to push it forward, either offensive line or skill players or the quarterback. That's simply something you got to do. You got to have some balance on that side of the football as far as young talent that can really make things happen. And I think that's got to be for Andrew Berry and the Browns in 2025. You have to aggressively go after offense. They've stacked the defense well, but now you have to work on the offense. You got to get that going, because as we see in the NFL, defensive performance can really fluctuate year to year very drastically. Offensive performance, I think, can be much more consistent. Obviously, quarterback play has a lot to do with it, but that's why I think early in this draft in particular, time to go load up on the offense. It's been something I've been saying for years. It's time to get it happening this April.
Yeah, and the other thing is that line that they've invested a lot in has not been good. So you're going to have to retool that and get it younger as well. Tim Bielik, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out, cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. Mock draft dropping tomorrow, so check that out. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Damon Wolfe from Dawgs by Nature, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby tins. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams, I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Andrew Berry today asked about the salary cap situation the Browns are in because of Deshaun Watson's guaranteed money, as well as the possibility of the playoffs not this year but in the near future.
You know, number one, our focus is on in the short term and the long term. I'd say short term, playing good football here down the stretch and making sure that we make the adjustments over the bye week that'll enable us to do that. And in terms of longer term planning, we never look at it just in terms of like in a vacuum in a single year focus. We'll have the resources and we'll be able to make the adjustments that allow us to continue to build the team and the roster. But again, that'll be more of an off-season focus than something that we're talking about at the bye.
Let's welcome in Damon Wolfe from Dawgs by Nature. Damon, he basically said he'd be able to do what he needed to do, which he's been able to do before. This one, I'm concerned with this one, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a challenge, moving forward over the next couple of years. And I think, for him, what they want to do is be able to spread out the cap hits over time, over the next couple of years. And whether or not that means bringing Watson back in some capacity next year, or maybe they, where he's actually taken up a roster spot, but he actually doesn't see the field, or maybe they tell him to stay home. That's all to be determined as of yet. And I really wouldn't expect him to elaborate too much in regard to that situation with him, just going through the injury situation and just coming off of surgery. So yeah, we have time for all that.
Yep, and there is an insurance component to it that if he's unable to play, there is some cap relief because the Browns have taken that. I know you wrote an article for Dawgs by Nature. Did you think the Browns did enough at the trade deadline? Were you surprised that they didn't do more?
Yeah, I think overall I was a little bit surprised that they didn't make another move or two. Of course, everybody expected the Za'Darius trade. But I thought that there were some opportunities maybe to pick up some late round draft picks with possibly moving off of Greg Newsome or Elijah Moore. Also maybe Dalvin Tomlinson or Shelby Harris, one of the veteran defensive tackles.
Yeah, I guess to me that says they think it's going to be a short retool. That if those are guys that, I get it with Harris and Tomlinson. Harris I think is on a 1-year deal. But Newsome, it's really interesting. My guess is they're viewing this as an aberration that they can turn around and pivot from pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's possible. I also do think that part of what's going on here, number one, I don't think that they probably had, they got offers that they were really happy with. At the deadline, they say deadlines make deals. But, you absolutely don't want to just give players away. And I think also a big part of it is wanting to evaluate the team over these last 8 games here and give the coaching staff and give Stefanski a chance to win as many games as possible to try to salvage a season. You don't want to, necessarily take away talent from the team in this situation as of yet, unless you're like really blown away by an offer, which I don't think they were. As in regard to Newsome, in particular, he could be a potential piece for 2025. However, I just don't think that the value matches up to pay your slot cornerback $14 million or whatever he's due to earn on that 5th-year option. I think that his value could be enhanced over the last, half of the year. If they could possibly get him some more reps on the outside, that probably won't happen unless, injuries happen to Denzel or Emerson. But if they could do that, I think that might be ideal, and that could raise his value, because really the past couple of years, I feel that Newsome's been kind of playing a little bit out of position, out of necessity for the team and doing what's best for the team. But, you go back to his rookie season, he was a pretty good man corner on the outside, really could match up with receivers pretty well and stay with them. He's had his struggles a little bit more in the slot here over the past 2 seasons.
The other one, while we're talking about that, Emerson, I thought he was going to take a step and be a Pro Bowl guy, and I am concerned at the way he's played.
Yeah, it's been a little bit disappointing for him. I kind of wonder if he's been dealing with maybe some nagging injuries or something like that that's kind of just impacted his performance a little bit. It's hard to say, nothing as he hasn't really missed any time, but he certainly hasn't played as well as he was, especially reportedly during training camp, where, the reports there were that, he was looking really, really good and really ready to take another step after the last half of the season last year, where he was one of the best man corners in the league.
What are you thinking about Elijah Moore? Do you think the Browns should try to get him back? I mean, I look at it; it just hasn't worked out. It hadn't worked out with a number of quarterbacks as well.
Yeah, that's Elijah Moore's performance has been a little bit disappointing. I was a really big fan of Moore coming out of college and was really rooting for the Browns to draft him. So when they were able to trade for him, I was pretty happy and excited about that. But it just hasn't lived up to the expectations. Now, he has had moments where he's flashed, and I think with the quarterback situation, the revolving door quarterbacks, he has fared better with some than others. And I thought that game against Baltimore with Jameis in his first start, that they really had a nice connection going. And he was actually the first read out of all the receivers. He was like the first read on 29% of the plays. And he was able to get open, and I think he had 8 catches for 85 yards. So coming off of that game, I was like, okay, well, hopefully there's a little bit of hope here moving forward, and possibly they could, look to sign him to a cheap extension, and get him kind of while his market, buy low on him while his market is not as high. But we'll just kind of have to see how it goes from here, and if he can, stay consistent and perform. But I think it'll be an evaluation.
All right, before we go to break, Andrew Berry was asked today, the approach moving forward, playing young guys versus trying to win football games.
Our primary focus every week is going to be to win, regardless of who is on the field. I think probably for every team, no different for us, there is going to be some natural transition every season, almost really regardless of your record, where there are players on the roster that get the opportunity for more of an expanded role. I think probably a perfect example is said, right, where after we made the Amari trade to Buffalo, he was a player that we thought was ready for more opportunities, and he's responded quite nicely to the increased chances in the passing game. But the reality is, anytime that we have a player take on an expanded role, whether they're a young player or whether they're a mid-year vet, we're doing it with the idea that they're going to help us win games. if it's their first time in the role, that they'll improve as they go and help us win games, moving forward. But, the primary focus is really to drive winning results.
And again, I get it. Basically, it's 8 weeks of evaluation, so you know who you want and who you're going to move on from.
Yeah, I think he said a lot of the right things there, that, outwardly that they want to just focus on getting wins. I think, to him and in his position, people on the personnel side of things, they would love to get an evaluation on some of these younger players. And I think we'll have time for that. I think at this point, though, they do want to win as many football games as possible, try to salvage a season, try to change the narrative. Because if they don't win more games here down the stretch, things could get a lot uglier than they already are.
Yeah, without question. Damon Wolfe from Dawgs by Nature and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, more from Andrew Berry. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby tins. $10 each. 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns with Damon Wolfe from Dawgs by Nature. Browns general manager Andrew Berry asked about the job security of new offensive coordinator, who's calling the plays now, Ken Dorsey.
We think very highly of Ken. He's obviously come in at times some less than ideal circumstances was what we've navigated early in the year. We continue to have a lot of confidence in him. I know Kevin does as well. And, we're going to continue to move forward and make the adjustments we need to improve the play on offense.
Does that mean his job is safe?
Jeff, I wouldn't go into anything for, anyone in this type of setting, but we're very happy with Ken.
Damon, when I look at this, I was for trying to build the offense around Deshaun Watson. But what they've done in doing that is they've lost the identity of the offensive line being physical. You got a huge payment to that offensive line, and it's been not good. I think you got to scrap what you've tried to do. It hasn't worked. It's been so bad I wouldn't try it another year.
Yeah, Dave, I agree with a lot of that. Andrew kind of answered he was asked, who was responsible or what motivated the offensive changes during the offseason. And he, basically said that, it was kind of Kevin's decision to move on from Alex Van Pelt. Of course, we know that Bill Callahan, asked out so he could go coach with his son. And I really do think the loss of Callahan has been a huge impact on the offense overall this year. And in regard to Callahan specifically, not so much necessarily. I mean, of course, he's a great coach and he, teaches technique and all that kind of stuff, which is very important for the offensive line, but also just in the run game and just the attention to detail that just seems to be lacking and missing this season. And, I'm sure that those losses have certainly been something for the Browns to kind of overcome as they try to figure things out here.
All right, this one's interesting as well. We've talked a little bit, we've heard a little bit about Cedric Tillman and what he's done. So among wide receivers, weeks 7 through 9, 32 targets, tied for first. Air yards, 403, that's second. Receiving yards, 255, that's fifth. Receiving touchdowns, that's third. 3 rather, that's tied for second. And then you also kind of tweet this out, and we're going to dovetail on that. Browns traded DPJ so Tillman could see the field. This year they traded Amari Cooper to get him out there, and he's played really well. We did something last segment. They just need playmakers. They need guys that threaten the defense with the ball in their hand. They don't have a lot of them right now.
Yeah, they don't. And, Tillman has been the brightest spot on this team, especially over the last few weeks. But, moving forward, he's a guy that I'm really, really excited about. He's really stepped into that X role in the receiving core that was previously occupied by Amari Cooper. And when Tillman came out in the draft, that's what everybody said about him, is that, he was like the best true X receiver in the draft. And, he's certainly flashed that at this point, and I'm very excited about him. And, hopefully moving forward, he could possibly develop into that number one receiver.
All right, before I let you go, I think we agree there's going to be some young guys playing. Who are you anxious to see play, and who do you think has the opportunity to maybe make a name for themselves and earn a spot moving forward that they build around?
Okay, let's go with the guys that I think can make a name for themselves first. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, they're kind of already in that process, but I do want to see more of Mike Hall. And I think, he could have a really strong finish to the year, along with Isaiah McGuire on the defensive line. He will have a lot more opportunity coming up since the trade of Darius Smith. And I expect to see a lot more of him. Currently, right now, he is the Browns' second overall rated defender on defense by Pro Football Focus, behind Miles. So, his play, even though it's been a limited sample size, has been encouraging. And Mahmoud Diabate at linebacker has been somebody that has flashed, and I want to see a little bit more out of him, and hopefully maybe he can be a starter or penciled in as a starter for next year in the middle of the defense. And then as far as on the offense, I'm excited about, hopefully we get to see a little bit of Jamari Thrash. And then on guys I'm anxious to see, two guys come up for me on each side of the ball. One is Kadarius Toney. He's kind of been forgotten about, but he's been signed to the practice squad for weeks now. Was kind of coming off an injury when he got here. So I'm hoping that maybe the Browns can get a look at him, and maybe he can be a dynamic playmaker for us and make some plays on offense. And then another guy who has actually just been on injured reserve, he's a rookie, is defensive back Miles Harden, who was drafted last year late on day 3. I really loved him coming out, and I think that he could be a potential guy that could man the slot corner position for us for the next few years.
I completely forgot about Toney. That's a guy that if he can get his head straight, has the physical tools to be a playmaker. So I'm with you. He's got to stay on the straight and narrow. Damon, Wolfe, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Damon.
No problem. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate you having me on.
Damon Wolfe, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff. Dawgs by Nature is where you can find him. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Turn our attention to the Cavaliers, unbeaten on the season. Ethan Sands, Cavs beat reporter from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby tins. $10 each, 10 times multipliers, 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We turn our attention to the Cavaliers here on Sports4CLE. Cavs off to an 8-0 start going into tonight's game against the Pelicans in New Orleans. ESPN's national basketball analyst Brian Windhorst, some of the key differences between this year's Cavs and last year's Cavs that are working out in their favor.
Last year, the most effective way for the Cavs to score was for them to create space going inside out. And that's why the 3-1-1 often, I felt, gave them the best chance to win, especially in a close game. Now, with the way Garland and Mobley are applying pressure to the defense, it changes the hand you're holding altogether. I think Donovan might have been a little fatigued last night, and he wasn't really a factor at all offensively in the second half. You had Donovan essentially being the floor spacer last night, and Garland eviscerating the Bucks' shoddy perimeter defense.
And that from a couple of days ago, obviously. Let's welcome in Ethan Sands, Cavs beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Ethan, what about that? It makes sense, the spacing, and you got a lot of interchangeable parts that can do some different things.
The Cavs are getting after it defensively, right? This is a team that is known for their defensive identity, and that is what Kenny Atkinson came into the season saying, right? They understood that they were going to take this team to the next level offensively, but to do that, they could not get away from that defensive identity that they were known for, even under J.B. Bickerstaff, right? So this is a team now that has Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell being able to attack at the point of attack on the defensive end, which creates options not only for Evan Mobley and Jared Allen to deter from the paint, but it also allows Darius and Donovan to read the passing lanes and get more steals and then get out into that transition that they've been known for. They've been playing with a lot more pace because, as we know, as this game has told us so many different times, defense leads the offense in the best kind of way.
What have you thought about Mobley? A lot was made, they were going to kind of try to unlock him. What do you think, current comparison? What's his ceiling? I mean, he's played really well.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I talked to Tristan Thompson before the season even started, and he had high expectations, comparing him to giving him a ceiling of Anthony Davis combined with Giannis Antetokounmpo. And to me, I want to throw somebody else in there as well. It's Kevin Garnett. Somebody that was known for the defensive end, was able to extend his shot a little bit, but for me, for this Cavs team, what Evan Mobley is doing right now reminds me a lot of Miami Heat's Chris Bosh back when they had LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and went on their championship run and had to have Chris Bosh, who was then a five-man, play a little bit more on the exterior, extend his shot out, and create more spacing that allowed Dwayne Wade, LeBron, and a new transition offense under Eric Spoelstra to create more spacing for everybody to be a dynamic offense, right? With Evan Mobley now bringing the ball up, which is something that Kenny Atkinson wants him to do more of, this team now has different options that it hasn't had in the past. It's an offense that you now see Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell moving without the ball, getting up the floor, getting to the corners, and getting up early shots into the shot clock, which is not only deterring teams from trying to just take the ball out of Donovan Mitchell's hands as much as they did last season, but it's also allowing Evan Mobley to have more touches with the basketball and attack and grow his offensive game, which is something that the Cavs need him to do to be able to take a further jump into the playoffs.
We've talked about Darius Garland. What have you seen from him, and how nice is it to see him have the success that he's had early on?
I mean, Darius Garland is no longer the player who had his $1 million smile wired shut, right? And he had to drink through a straw for an extended period, forcing him to lose weight and not play how he wanted to last season. Darius is back to the player that he has been in the past, and the Cavs need him to be, and he especially displayed it in his back and forth with Damian Lillard on Monday against the Bucks. Let me rattle off some stats for you guys, because this is just what he was able to do early on in the season has been incredible. Obviously, take this with a grain of salt because it's early into the season, but Darius Garland is just the second Cav ever to record 39 points or more on 68% from the field, shooting with 7 or more three-point field goals made. The other one is Mo Williams from 2009 against the Phoenix Suns, right? Darius is also just the 5th player in Cavs history to be able to tie LeBron James when it comes to he's been the 5th player in Cavs history to reach numbers like 39 points, 8 assists, 7 three-point field goals made in a single game, joining LeBron James, who did it 3 times, Mo Williams, Kyrie Irving, and Donovan Mitchell. Then you got to look at other things where it comes to Darius Garland and how he's grown from last season and how he's been able to minimize the turnovers that were such a big feature in what he was holding back from last year, right? And to this season, he's already started with the best assist to turnover ratio of his career. And in the game on Saturday against the Bucks in Milwaukee, when he didn't have a great scoring night, he still ended the game with 11 points and 10 assists with 0 turnovers. It was the second game of the NBA career with a double-double and 0 turnovers. The other one happened in 2022 against the Dallas Mavericks, right? So it's been a long time coming for Darius to get back to this form that he's wanted to be at. And he's also been criticized for the play that he's had down the stretch. Obviously, we touched on what happened on Monday with Dame, but he ranks 3rd in the NBA in 6 points per game on 70% shooting percentage during clutch time to begin the season. This doesn't even touch on just the pure joy that he's playing with, that the team is thriving off of. Like, he's doing different celebrations that we haven't seen before. The kiss to the sky after 3-pointers made. And he's also allowing his teammates to be great as well. We talked about the assist aspect of that as well. It's just really interesting to see how he's been a jolt, not only for the offense, but also on the defensive end, because as I mentioned earlier with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, who rank in the top 10 among the 28 players that have defended at least 5 shots at the rim, he's basically allowing his offensive player to get to the rim and having those 2 big front court guys deter them and just send the ball away. So he's been able to impact the game in multiple ways and grow so much of what we've seen from last season.
Let's turn our attention to Donovan Mitchell. How impressed have you been, especially with his leadership? And, you know, I kind of chuckled. He was the Eastern Conference Player of the Week last week. We didn't even talk about how he has played. He's just kind of letting everybody play and having a good time, and then he goes out and, you know, he's dropping 26 like it's nothing.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell is leading a different kind of way this year. He's leading by letting other players around him be great, right? Donovan Mitchell is off to a season where after a year he felt like, or it would seem to have been, that he needed to do everything for this team. And there were teams that were sending doubles and blitzing and trying to get the ball out of his hands, and he still had to feel like he had to get the job done. That's not the same feeling from this season. And because you talk about it, you get Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, then guys off the bench like Sam Merrill and Isaac Okoro, who've already made an impact, not to mention Dean Wade, who's been out with an illness, but how he's been able to impact the offense and the defensive side as well. Donovan Mitchell has been able to lean into his guys. He is one of the premier leaders in knowing when and who needs the ball at every single moment. Evan Mobley has been a guy he's leaned into. It's not by coincidence that Kenny Atkinson has paired Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley more this season than we've seen in the past, where he's also combining Darius Garland and Jared Allen. Donovan and Evan, if Evan's getting the ball from Donovan Mitchell, it creates an understanding and a trust, knowing that if you're the best player or the franchise face and you're giving me the ball and telling me to be more aggressive, that he doesn't have to second guess himself and is able to attack the rim, attack his defender without second guessing or thinking of anything else, even when it comes to making the right next play and what that means for this Cavs offense going forward.
Yeah, you know, he truly wants to win. You see it by his actions. He doesn't seem to care. You know, all right, if my scoring average is down a little bit and we're winning, great. Let's just keep winning.
Yeah, this is a guy who is close to or around his season, like a career low when it comes to starting a season in points per game, but he's taking less shots. He's more efficient. and he's passing better than he has in the past, right? This is a guy who not only feels like he doesn't have to do it all, like I mentioned earlier, but he also feels like the more shots that he's taken have been more open than they have in the past because everybody else is drawing attention as well. It's no longer just the Donovan Mitchell show. It's the Cavs team, the Cavs offense that is going and running through Donovan, but also has the opportunity to run through multiple different players and take some stress off of him. That's also another big piece is Donovan Mitchell hasn't played a whole lot of minutes. He hasn't averaged over 30 minutes to start the season, which he's averaged every single year in his career during the NBA. So that means that he can not only preserve his energy, his health throughout the season, but that should mean that he should be ready for the playoffs and be fully healthy when it matters most.
Ethan Sands, Cavs beat reporter for cleveland.com and Plain Dealer. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Ethan.
Thanks for having me.
Ethan Sands, make sure you check him out. Great Cavs coverage for cleveland.com as well as the pages of the Plain Dealer. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.